The Trump administration is actually making it harder for legal immigrants to get a permanent legal status. Legal immigrants to get permanent legal status in the US if they rely on food stamps or subsidized housing. The move will have the greatest impact on immigrants who are living in the country legally and are likely to receive government benefits, making it much harder for people who are struggling financially to win legal permanent status, commonly known as a green card, so they can remain in the United States. This is the latest policy, of course, by the Trump administration, hoping to restrict immigration. The director of US Citizenship and Immigration Services says this will allow the government to insist that immigrants who come to the country were self-sufficient and would not be a drain on society. And one more time, just so it's clear, this new rule would alter how the government decides if someone is a public charge, allowing officials to deny green cards to those who have used or will likely use the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, commonly known as SNAP, food stamps, Section 8 housing vouchers and assistance, public housing, or most forms of Medicaid. And of course, Donald Trump himself has been extremely open on his thoughts on this. Take a look at this.
Priority will also be given to higher wage workers, ensuring we never undercut American labor. To protect benefits for American citizens, immigrants must be financially self-sufficient.
Yeah, if we had that standard, we'd have almost no one in the country. So we certainly wouldn't have any Irish in the country. They were running from a famine. You know who's not rich when they get here? People running from a famine. Okay, we wouldn't have any Irish. We wouldn't have any Italians. We wouldn't have any Jews, let alone the Chinese, let alone African Americans.
Well, we'd still be here because.
Yes, but certainly we're not brought here because of the wealth that associated with you guys. And of course, Statue of Liberty has this quote. Everybody used to be familiar with it, but they've kind of buried it. So look, there's a couple of problems here. One is, I thought you guys were against undocumented immigrants. No, they're against all immigrants. Second is talking about, they're basically not worthy of coming here if you're not rich. So that's why I wanted to make sure that you guys did know the quote on the Statue of Liberty, where we receive immigrants historically. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. It's not unclear about the homeless, the wretched refuse, the tired, the poor, the huddled masses. And now Trump says, give me your millionaires and billionaires and corporate executives yearning for tax shelters, and we will bring them here. But everybody else, you're not welcome. And if you can't at least agree with our core principles, you might be a little un-American.
I just wanted to point out two more things. So more than 4 million non-citizens, were in families that received SNAP benefits between 2014 and 2016. And I just have two quotes that I thought were really important. One is from Sarah Pierce. She's an analyst at the Migration Policy Institute, saying it will likely shift immigration away from Latin America and towards Europe, while disproportionately disadvantaging women, children, and the elderly. Marilena Hincapi is an executive director of the National Immigration Law Center. She said it'll have dire humanitarian impact, forcing some families to forego critical life-saving healthcare and nutrition, and the damage will be felt for decades to come. So this doesn't stop people from coming, it just stops people from asking for help when they need it.
Yeah, but it was always gonna be set up with this idea. I mean, first of all, it was like, oh, we're gonna target illegals, right? That was what they would always preface it by saying, and then you'd always see that ICE would end up detaining legal citizens and then say, oh, we didn't know, we were just doing a thorough check. It was kind of set up for the same purpose, which is to try and drive force this sense of we're tackling down on immigration, but sooner or later we're gonna end up coming for every and any immigrant who happens to not fall into our idea, by ours I mean Trump's idea of America. But it goes back to the concept of what I thought was supposed to be the bedrock of America, of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and working hard and making the American dream happen. And these benefits are put in place to basically help anyone who wants to obtain that. So by saying, oh no, if you use any of those, or you, not even if you have used them, but you might use them based on your English proficiency or your age or your family, well, we might deny you the chance to even try and do that before you can even come. So, and it reminds me of one of the best interviews which everyone in their lifetime should check out. Martin Luther King, not the quotes that conservatives like to take on MLK Day and pretend they actually familiarize themselves with, but when he talks about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and the kind of racist tendencies that go along with that. This is a Martin Luther King that conservatives don't want to highlight because he was very radical in when he called out, basically calling out white privilege and the way that testament was only offered to certain groups of immigrants, specifically the Irish and the Europeans, who would actually be given land so that they could become proficient and they could get themselves wealthy. But more often than not, people of color, especially black and brown folk in America, they weren't given that privilege. They weren't even allowed the opportunities to try and raise themselves up from the bedrock, which a lot of Americans had put them into. So it just goes along with that sentiment, is like, so you're not only lying when you're selling this idea of the American dream, but you're not even gonna let anyone have the opportunity to try and get it.
Yeah, so there's layers of what's wrong with this policy. So first of all, saying, if we think you might one day require public assistance, what?
Right.
What is this, a thought crime?
What's that gonna be based on?
Right, and like, hey, we think one day you might be poor, so we're gonna kick your ass preemptively now and deny you certain rights. That's insanity, right? And by the way, if you're a Republican voter, are you all fabulously wealthy already? I mean, look, first they said it was undocumented immigrants, now it's all immigrants, including green card holders, which is another layer I'm gonna get to. You sure they're not gonna come for you next? By the way, they're already coming for you. Now they're doing drug tests, they're doing everything they can to deny you Medicaid, if you're poor, food stamps for your kids if they're hungry, etc., right? So in terms of the green cards, that used to be that once you got a green card, you're perfectly legal here as a resident. The only thing you couldn't do was vote, but otherwise, you had all the privileges of full-blown resident in America. Now, no, they were lying. They hate all immigrants. So unless they're married to Donald Trump or in that family. So now they're chipping away at all the rights the green card holders have. So how could it make a difference? I mean, look, Steve always told the story before. He's sometimes appears on air here, and he's an employee here. And his parents came incredibly poor from Korea. With the help of other family, et cetera, they were able to get a toehold into a 7-Eleven that they ran, et cetera. But before they got to 7-Eleven, they were dirt poor, so they needed assistance. So they got food stamps, and because they were hungry. And lo and behold, they worked really hard. It's the American dream, right? Wound up owning that 7-Eleven, wound up helping others own 7-Elevens, right? And wound up sending their kids to really great schools, and they would have done well if they weren't working at the Young Turks. So, that was supposed to be what Republicans stood for. I remember because I was a Republican back then when I was younger, and my family lived the American dream. A lot of my friends lived the American dream. We were told what now it turns out was a lie. Yeah. And it's not that I actually am still patriotic. I don't believe the American dream is a lie. I think it's awfully difficult and way harder today than it ever was. Well, depending on who you are. But but having said that, the Republicans, it turns out, never meant it. They never believed in the American dream. And this whole bootstrap stuff is nonsense. They actually want to make sure that you have as difficult a time as possible if you're from the wrong place and you look different than them.
Well, I like that you brought that up, and it also contradicts what you always hear from conservatives, where they say, well, why are they even flooding our border? Just come the legal way. And then now they're saying, oh, you can come the legal way, but we're actually going to put more restrictions on it, so it makes it even more difficult. And for anyone, and I'm speaking on behalf of people who have actually went through the process, I know, as you mentioned there, and I want to highlight it straight away, the process for me has been a lot easier because I've had family be able to support, company support of going through the process, but it is not cheap, right? So to break it down, if you're actually looking for ways to try to, in a way, discourage people from trying to get a green card on its own, it costs a substantial amount of money just to even try to get into the process, to even get into the interview stage. So if you're talking about family-based, at least $4,000, including lawyer fees, and then if you're looking to try and go through, you've got biometrics, you've got so many fees added on to that. So you're actually going to be out of pocket before you've even got into the position to try to become a legal citizen. And then they're trying to say, oh, you can spend all that money trying to come here, but you know what? We might not even give you it because you might one day need to rely on the government to help you after you've pumped all this money into trying to become a citizen. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and very last thing here, guys, is that we had a system that was okay. It wasn't great. We, and a lot of Democrats also believed in deportations even before Trump, et cetera. But the one thing that we were all theoretically in favor of until the Trump years was, well, look, America is built on immigrants. That's an absolute fact, and no one could dispute that. So we all were in favor of legal immigration, getting in line, as Francis did, as I did, et cetera. And the Republicans said that most of all. They shouted it from the rooftops. Now, not only do they do this, they're against what they're calling chain migration. Chain migration just means family members. That is the predominant legal way of entering the country. The number one way to become a legal immigrant, not an illegal, not an undocumented, but a legal immigrant. And now the Trump Republicans have said, yep, we were lying the whole time. We never even believed in that. We don't think families should come here. So there's no end to their hypocrisy. And sometimes people ask me, why'd you leave the Republican Party? Well, if you find out everything they were saying is a lie and you stayed, what's wrong with you? The question isn't why I left. The question is, why hasn't everybody left the Republican Party?
We know the answer to that.
Yeah. Well, hey, you made it this far. You must really like the Young Turks. Thank you. We really appreciate you. Now, another easy way to keep supporting us also helps keep your internet activities and data private, all with a push of the NordVPN app. Head to nordvpn.com/TYT right now for 75% off of your next 3 years.